Okay, but can you check and see whether it's live stream now?
Okay, you're live.
Okay. Well, hello, good evening, everyone. So this is the first submission review, and we will split. I'll try and split the time in two halves. The first half we'll do the submission feedback, and I've selected a few bots to give some fun feedback. I couldn't do every single one. There's just too many submissions. And I think in the second half, we'll cover some of the Singapore APIs, give an overview of what's in store. Okay, so let me just share my screen.
Hi, guys.
All right, so the first bot is from Ducia. Okay, what I like about this bot is that they've actually thought about most of the different things that you can anticipate. The background could be non-repeating, so I would use a larger background. But let's just move on this bot and see what it does. Okay, so you've got the transport. Okay, so it looks like it's very menu driven. Okay, and this is how you should start most of your version 1 of your bots, right? So most bots, when you start off, you might not have a clear idea of what's going on. You want to just get the rough shape of the bot itself in terms of interactions. And this is how you do it. You'd actually do it using a simple menu like this and try and fill in the content. Okay. So I would say this bot is pretty good. I mean, it's a good start, that is, because you shouldn't stay here. Okay, let's try and now hammer it with some rubbish. And you can say it says, I don't understand, let's continue. Okay, so all in all, stable, simple bot which does its job. Okay, and this is where all of you should aim for as a first version. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at this one here. So this is also what I like about this bot was that people were starting to look at the content. So the visuals are still quite basic. It's the same bot that I think in the template that I pushed out. But this bot is interesting in the sense that they took a little more trouble to think about something interesting to put in for the tips and tips for visitors. Okay, and this is really what it's all about. So now you're moving away from just, okay, look, very factual, you know, you got language, you got this and that, into something that is more engaging. So the whole idea of chatbots is that I think the chatbots that you're building right now, they're not complicated. Okay, there's not a lot of programming involved, or honestly a lot of NLP either. It's a very basic. Okay, so the question is, how do you take something basic and make it something that's more engaging and interactive, and something that is also useful as well? Okay, and so the first step is to flip your bot. So there are two ways of looking at information. The first way is to see, okay, look, I've got this bot and I need to wrap it around the information. So the earlier bot is a lot like that. And it did a good job. Okay, so it's not a criticism, right? I've got some information. I'm wrapping the chatbot around that, and I'm going to provide some, simple access into it, right? So like Discover Egypt is fairly, straightforward, and I've got, fairly interesting things like mummification and maybe the calendar and so on, right? Okay, things you didn't know about the Egyptian calendar, right? So this is really a good example of the chatbot wrapping itself around the information, right? So there's lots of information, lots of tidbits and ideas and so on, and you're wrapping it out. But this bot is moving one step in the right direction, moving away from just that, okay, and looking and seeing how can I present the information in a way that is relevant to the person consuming the bot. Okay, so this is a Egypt tour bot. So what would be most interesting to a person who is on a tour trip would be, things like what to pack, right? Some survival, Arabic language tips, right? Which is a great idea. Okay, you should at least know how to say shukran and so on as when you go to the Middle East, right? Transportation, how do I get around? Okay, so these are I'm not saying it's completely there yet, but what you're seeing here is a shift away from just, I'm taking this information, I already have a lot of interesting stuff, and then moving in it towards a place where you're thinking about the user instead, and you are curating the information based on what the user might find interesting because of the context in which this bot creates. Okay, so it's a small baby step towards that direction, and that's really the way where you want to head towards when you create your bots, right? One comment on this would be maybe use images. Images are very powerful, and they can convey a lot of emotion as well, right? So don't leave the background and other stuff just blank for a final bot, okay? All right, let's move on. So what I like about this bot is that they took the trouble to make the tour button a bit bigger. Okay, so because it's a sales bot as well, right? So the person who designed this bot, Kian Lo and co and team, understood that this is primarily a bot to promote sales of Egyptian tours, right? For this company, at least, this fictitious company that is, okay? And they've packed in some information, and it's always wrapped around the whole idea of tours. So it's not random information like, you know, calendars and mummification, although that is very interesting, right? It is really wrapped around what can you do, all right? Now, so this is good. This is a good, I mean, content-wise, this is the way you should do it. I mean, you should go towards, but not the way the presentation is done. The presentation is done poorly because no one likes to read a list of bullet points. It's not engaging, not interesting, you know, and after a while, it gets just dull, okay? So you've got whoever did this bot, Kian, you've got the approach right, okay, which is that this is, I mean, explicitly a sales type bot, and you want to give out information which is interesting for tours and so on, which will be consumed by people who are using it. But at the same time, I think the presentation can be improved. Okay, and we'll see shortly how, because I think all of you hit a few interesting ideas. Okay. All right. So the first interesting idea along this direction is this bot. It's still not complete, I think, Constance, but Constance has got a team has got a right idea. And that is that if you're unsure, complete this quiz to see which tour suits you best. So a lot of people don't know what they need. Okay, so one of the things that you can do with a chatbot more readily, perhaps, than you can do with a website and other stuff, is that you can do things like quizzes and information, make it fun and interactive, right? So what I like about this is that they had this very basic quiz. I mean, it is pretty basic, but the idea is there, right? You can use a quiz to actually say, okay, look, visit the monuments, the iconic monuments in style, or explore the dunes. Let's try, right? Explore the dunes like a local. Now, of course, this is not a complete thing. It's still a lot of work that needs to be done. It's still too much of a quiz kind of thing, all right? But the idea is that it goes in the right direction of using a quiz or something else to actually help people discover something new. And they can then branch off from there, maybe escape the quiz and go somewhere else. Okay, and all of that is easy to do with rooms and keys. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next idea. Okay, what I like about this bot is that, yeah, you've got not just the top 5 best travel tips, right? You also have got some kind of data gathering. Is it helpful or is it unhelpful? And you want to do this, and what you could do is actually to just log this stuff into a log, right? Using the logging function, the L function, and that way you can actually know, you know, are people really using the bot? I mean, what do they find helpful about it, etc. You know, so this is a good thing to do, right? It's a good thing to do if it's coupled with logging and if it's coupled with some kind of feedback mechanism. Now, there's another way of doing the logging, which is more, how do I say, better for things like displays of data and so on. And that's called the group data. It's in CU 102. You can have a look at that if you want to, where you don't put into a log, you put into a data file, a data store. Okay. So actually many different ways of doing or gathering user feedback. Okay, so this is a good idea, right? Do this. Okay, how about this one? So this I can't say I like the UI too much because there's a lot of icons. So go easy on the icons. I don't know, maybe it's an age difference kind of thing. Maybe it's for the younger set. Okay, but what I like about this bot is that the tips of visitors, they don't give you all the tips all at once, and that's a good idea. Okay, now I can't say this bot is executing the idea very well, because see here you've got don't leave unsecured. Of course, that's obvious, right? But maybe a better tip might be, bring toilet paper, or maybe this is the time of year to travel, and stuff like that, right? Or some words you can use, for example, etc. Right? But you see, there's more tips. This is what I like. This is the part that I like, that the person who did this took the trouble to put in the more tips, and this is definitely useful. Right? Make sure your accommodation is insect proof and use insect repellent. Okay, but you can go beyond that, right? It's the start of an idea, a kernel of an idea, but I think it can be fleshed out a lot more. Okay, certainly the images here could change, and I think you could have a one-liner like this, but you can also flesh out with some more detailed text and maybe some links and other stuff to allow people to explore more about the country. Okay, and I think how you phrase things and how you do things, it's not rocket science. It's not a great deal of programming, but it does take a great deal of design. Okay, so this is where I think design is different from programming, right? So most people coming think that chatbots are primarily about programming. Well, yes, in some ways. And later on for this week, you will see that, yes, we will up the programming a level just a bit. Okay, and but for the basic chatbots, it's primarily about design. So good chatbots are really all about thinking in terms of what would your users find interesting and useful, and executing it in an attractive and convincing fashion. Okay, this bot, okay, I put up this bot here to tell you what not to do, unfortunately, and that is the background, man. So I know, you think about deserts and you think about cactuses and so on, but in all honesty, that's not really, it doesn't really talk about Egypt, right? This is an Egypt bot. So maybe you want to change the background, okay, to make it a little more interesting or coherent with the theme of your bot itself. This is a good bot. I like the background because contrast helps you to focus. Okay, some of the great painters in 300 years ago, right, they use contrast to great effect. They use a dark background and a lighter foreground to accentuate features of people they were trying to paint and so on, right? And it's an easy, simple trick that you can use. Okay, so contrast can be used to focus attention, right? So this is, again, just UI design, basic design, right? And so I like this, and I like the picture that they chose as well. It's something that's magical and inviting, right? Because you're wondering, what is this all about? What are the lights there for, etc. Right? So good job with this. And I think I like the fact that they changed the mouse icon. I'm sure you can see this. As soon as it hovers over the buttons, the icon changes. I can't say I agree with the choice of a pointer, but all in all, not too bad. Okay. So if you click on Discover Egypt, right, it gets a basic thing here. All right, let's look at tips for travelers. Okay, so the rest of the stuff is still pretty basic. Okay, so on the Nile tour, what they do well is to actually dig deeper into what a Nile tour would actually, encompass, right? Okay, so this is the interesting part, and I like the fact that they've actually put in some snippets and so on, so you can actually look, and it's a mixed bag, right? So this is the interesting part. Being unexpected is good, right? Because people then will want to click and they want to interact with your bot because they can't really predict what's going to happen next. The worst thing that you can do is become predictable, whether it's your chatbot or in real life. Okay, don't become predictable because it's boring. Right, so this is good. So I think of course the content could be improved, but all in all, right, it's a good start. Okay, to do it within a few days is not too bad. Okay, what I like about this bot is that on the tips for visitors, so it's still not fleshed out yet, this bot. So this is by Elmson's team. Okay, we click on tips for visitors. You can see things like photography, camel rides, toilet, smoking, taxi, and of course the exit. All right, although I think exit is misleading. You want to say back to menu or something, or back button or something like that, right? So you click on photography, it's thematic. So this is another thing that you can also do. You have a lot of content, but you can shift them around to make it thematic, right? Whether it's got to do with photography and so on. And that would appeal to a certain class of person, a person who's interested in photography, or perhaps in camel rides and so on. So now, this was not the intent of this, the bot creator. I'll just bring it up so that you can just see that although you have content, don't make it a one-to-one kind of mapping with the content, right? Layer around it and shift around it so that it becomes more user-centric rather than content-centric. Okay, this is not what this person is doing here, not what this team is doing here, but at least it's an idea that I just can illustrate and see. Okay, this bot completely different from what I suggested, which is good. I like that. Okay, it's a pet spot. Okay, so done by Caitlin and company. Right, and just starts off with, so how may I help you? Well, I don't know. I just say hello. Okay, and it says hello back again, which is not very helpful. But if I did something like some rubbish, then it gives me a hint that yes, okay, look, I can see about what pets do you sell. But it might save you the trouble, save your users the trouble by just putting that up front. That's all you have to say. What pets do you sell? Then maybe you want to just say that up front. That's okay. All right. And of course, you can say rabbit, and it'll tell you about rabbits or hamsters and so on, which is a good, it's not too bad. Where I would think you can improve this board is, put in more pictures. And again, contrast. This is very busy. It looks busy. It's hard to see visually. And because it's cropped off on my laptop, it looks a bit odd. Okay. And even if it were shrunk down, it would still be very busy. All right. You contrast that. So it's hard to read and so on. Contrast that with these guys. Where was that again? I think it was, yeah, this one here, which is much easier to read. Okay. I'm not saying all of you ought to do a dark background like this. Just have contrast in mind. Okay, and I think these people here did a good job with contrast. Okay. Let's look at the last one, I think. No, was it the last one? Rabbits. And yep, this one. Okay. This is I'm not sure what happened here with this bot. But let's say you click on tips for visitors. Okay. So it's odd that you've got these buttons here and not many selections here, but you expect the user to type in stuff. So that's, it's just a waste of time, right? Unless there's a real reason to type, why do it? Okay. Now you see it's inconsistent because here you've got no buttons. Then here to do very similar thing, you've got buttons. Okay, and this looks like more like an informational kind of thing. It's not user-centric. All right, so you're gonna change this, and whatever you don't do this, like a link, with lots of text. Don't do that. That's just doesn't look good. Okay. All right. And okay, so again, just putting out this random stuff like this, it's not helpful because why would I be interested in knowing that Egypt is designated by ISO 4217? Okay, you can just Google that if you need to, right? So Do's and don'ts, guys. Okay. Sam, do you have any comments? Sorry, Sam is still there. Sam?
Yeah, I think it looks good so far. Just some minor tweaks in your presentation and design. I think most of you are quite on the way there already.
Your screen is off, Sam. Switched off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any questions on the main chat?
So far, there's no questions. It's been quite quiet. Yes. Any
Okay,
questions? Please feel free to ask on the chat, on the YouTube chat.
Okay, if there are no questions, I am running a bit behind time. I will try to finish the next part, which is but if you have any questions, please just, key it in. Okay, we'll go on to the next part, which is using the APIs. Is my screen okay, Sam? Because sometimes you get this build order thing that sort of blocks it.
Yeah, I think it looks okay.
It's okay? Oh, oops, okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is, we debated this quite, hang on. Zoom and presentations don't really work that well. Let me try it again. Okay, so we're going to talk about Singapore APIs now. And really what I'm trying to do is to give you an overview of what to do and, to give you a feel for the lay of the land, okay? This part of the program, the second week, is more technical than last week's. Last week is really about just understanding the NLP parts, ins and outs of it. This one is slightly more technical, okay, where we talk about APIs, and we'll also give some tips, some exercises to help you create your own APIs if you need to, okay? And this is where you should ask questions if you need to, or perhaps, if you review this, let's say, video, we can do it over the Telegram chat, obviously. Okay, so the context in which we're going to teach you about the Singapore APIs is in the BusB, not BusB, but the BusB app. Okay, so the idea is something like a bus information kind of service, right? Because it's simple, it's obvious. Okay, there are other applications obviously around for bus services and so on, right? Pretty good ones also on the outside. Okay, so this is not an attempt to emulate them. It's simply an attempt to teach you. So it's pedagogical rather than something that's going to be the next killer app. Okay, but it contains enough interesting parts to make it worthwhile to learn. Right. So the BusB concept is a chatbot to help people find buses, but of course we want to extend that to actually look at also things like close by food places or places of interest and so on. Okay, and now since we are releasing the stuff today, I'm thinking of delaying this to Monday. So my apologies, it should be Monday midnight. Okay, so next Monday midnight. Okay, I'll give you an extra day. Right. Okay. So what I've done here is actually create a new template for you. It's not released yet. We actually found a bug in some of the stuff. So give us some time to resolve it. Most likely by tomorrow morning or tomorrow, we'll be resolve the bug, and we'll actually publish the template for you to download and actually start working on. Okay. But the bot itself it comes in 3 different micro topics, right? There's BusB version 0, 1, and 2, all in the same folders. Okay. So on the topics, you'll see 3 different .ms, version 0, version 1, and version 2. And the idea is that you progressively introduce new topics, new ideas, so that you can follow the code and actually, edit and amend stuff on your own. And we'll introduce also exercises for version 0, 1, and 2, which you need to complete. Okay. So in version 0, it's very simple. Given a bus stop code, so if in Singapore, all our bus stops have got codes. If you have not noticed this, look up to a bus stop. Okay, And then you'll see this number, a 5-digit number, and that represents the code for that bus stop. Okay, so the idea is that, okay, look, if I have a code, can I determine what buses will just arrive next? Okay, so it's a very simple use case, and that's what we're after, to see how we put all of that together to call all the API calls and so on and display that information. Okay, and it's real time. In version 2, we will add geolocation. This is where I'm having trouble actually. I thought we'd solve this, but today, unfortunately, before publish time, we did another test and there was a bug. So I'm not sure where it is. We're trying to fix it, okay? But the idea is that with geolocation, you can take your phone and if you give it permissions, then, you know, I'm sure you've seen this, like when you open, what's it called? Some of the route finding applications, like, you know, that you might have on your phone, they will say, do you give this app access to your location? Okay, and so the browser will actually prompt you for that, prompt your users for that, that is, and when they say yes, or they give the right permissions, then of course they can go forward and actually use the app. So geolocation allows your chatbot to get access into the user's current location. Okay, and you will use that in version 1 to display the nearest bus stops, in addition to doing everything that version 0 could. So it's an addition to version 0. Okay, and version 2 expands this so that using more APIs than to just call in other stuff like food places and other things that we have from other APIs. Okay, so the whole goal of this is just to show you how to make the API calls, how to use it, and so on, because the devil is in the details. Okay. All right. So just to give you how APIs work. So what is an API in the first place? Okay. So an API, essentially, to a layman, okay, is simply a way for two computers to talk to each other in a standardized way. Okay. So, you know, you could have a chatbot talking to the server to get information, or mobile app, or a desktop app, or another server, for example. It doesn't matter. Okay, so an API is a standardized method to do it. Okay, and usually the server, which is a big computer in the internet, and it's owned by someone, like maybe, like in this case, we will be using the Singapore government servers. They will expose an API which is publicly available. You can look and read the APIs. You can see what kind of information is available, and all the other details. Okay, there's tons of details there, right? So how APIs work, as far as we are concerned, as far as your chatbot is concerned, well, you know already, you've got Chatbot University, you've got the app.smojo.org. We hope to actually move these a bit into smojo.ai in the near future with some other significant changes. And last of all, of course, you've got the various Singapore government, Singapore APIs, okay, the public APIs. Okay, the 3 APIs that we already have hooked up are from the LTA, the Land Transport Authority, STB, which is tourism, and a lot of other stuff, actually. They do a lot of other things as well. And OneMap, which gives you addressing and mapping capabilities. All right, so it's fairly basic, right? But these are the most interesting ones that we could find. And we would just invite you, if you have any other APIs you'd like us to add in over the course of the next couple of weeks, let us know. And on best effort basis, we will try our best to actually put those in for you. We also give you in the template, which will be up soon, all right, hopefully by today or by tomorrow, a clear example of how to call other APIs and build the API clients yourself, okay? All right, so the idea is here that the LTA stuff has got things like real-time bus information. It also has got static bus information, like, you know, where all the bus stops, you know, which buses go where, etc., and whatnot, right? Okay. The STB has got things like food places and everything else you'd be interested, would be interesting in for tourism. Okay, money changes and so on, of all things. And the OneMap would have mapping and also address searches. Okay, so you guys work on AutoCAF, which is hosted on m.chatbot.university. You publish your chatbot, okay, and that creates basically a program in the cloud. Okay, so your chatbots are all just programs which are responding to interactions coming in from the web. Okay, and so you have the BuzzBee chatbot, and we also add in two other derived APIs. These are APIs hosted by us, not by the Singapore government, but the data is all just grabbed in from the Singapore government websites. Okay, and there are two kinds. There are refactored APIs. So refactored APIs are those. What I mean by them is that sometimes some data, some APIs done by let's say in this case like the LTA, right? It may not be convenient for your chatbot to use. Okay, so for example, the bus routes and bus stops, they don't give it, or they don't allow convenient access to it. Okay, there's too much data that's being spat out by the servers. So what we did was we should download all that stuff, and it's downloaded and updated on a daily basis. And you've got much better access to find out things like nearest bus stops and bus stops within a certain radius and so on, which those APIs, those capabilities are not present in the LTA public API. Okay, so these are refactored APIs. In addition to that, you could have aggregated or historical data, which is data which is collected over time. For example, we were thinking of collecting things like bus load times or arrival times at certain bus stops to see, how variable are these things, are the buses always full or not, etc. Okay, and give you better, maybe week by week data on whether these buses were full or not. Okay, or how were they late, on time, etc., and so on, right? So that's, and how on average, what's the average on a daily basis? How to say? When will the next bus come on average? So you can plan ahead. Okay, so we've not implemented that part yet. We just got a few ideas, and I think if it were interesting enough, we'll do some digging around. We'll probably put that in as well, so you can have access to it, and we'll publish it for you to use. Okay, so it's very fluid, right? The stuff that's already done are all marked out there. So the LTA stuff, the SGB, one map, and the refactored API specific for the bus stops and bus routes, I missed that out, are all available right now for use. Okay, so your chatbot, okay, would communicate through a client piece, the API client, we call it. Okay, so there's a server part and there's a client part. Your chatbot has the client part, and the client would then communicate with all these different APIs to get the information that it needs, and then display that in a way that is interesting and valuable to your users. Okay, so this is the overall view of how things work. All right, so now the most important thing you need to find out at this stage then is, how do you find the documentation? Because there's lots of stuff to be documented, and you need to know how things work, how the APIs are called, what APIs are there, where do we find them, etc. Right? So all the APIs are implemented as cloud modules. All right, so I'll come to that. You already seen cloud modules. You've seen at the top of main.m, you've seen Terra/app and Terra/chat, etc. Right? Those are all cloud modules. We write them, we publish them actually, but instead of publishing a chatbot, we publish these modules, which you then just download each time you open up your browser, and it just works. Okay, it's integrated into your software, and it's a part of that, right? So the same way, we publish all of these APIs as cloud modules, right? And the basic model that we use to find the rest of the modules, to document the rest of the modules, is Mojo/doc. So if you just open up a blank window, a pane, a new tab in your AutoCAD, and you put in Mojo/doc, you load in this. And there's one very important word for you to know, that is doc. Okay, so within Mojo.doc, which is the module, there are many different words, but the one that you would use is called doc. And the way you use it is first to load up the Mojo/doc word, right, which just imports the cloud module itself. Okay, that's all it does. And then you call doc space, and then the word that you want to find the cloud word, that is, that you want to find the documentation for. Sorry, it's cloud word or non-cloud word, I think it work on both, but I think we only done it for CloudWords so far. Okay. So in this case, there is one long cloud word here, smojo/API/Singapore/gov/bus, which means basically all the APIs from the Singapore government to do with buses. Okay, and that would give you, if you type in these lines into your browser right now, you would then see the documentation for the /bus. Okay, so now let's go in, and this is very important. Okay, because if you don't know how to find the documentation, you can't write the APIs. All right. So what I'll do is I will not just we're not just recording this session. I will also send you a PDF version of these slides. Okay. So the APIs, there are a few. So the prefixes are all the same. So it's mojo/API/Singapore/gov/ then something else. Okay. So we've got bus, we've got bus/info, we've got map, and got places. Okay. So bus is for real-time bus arrival. The bus info is for the refactored bus stop and route information. Map, it just gives you the mapping and address search. You draw these maps and plot points on them and so on. Okay. And places would be things like, to search for places of interest by category. It's quite extensive. Okay. This is from STV. Right. And of course, if you want us to put in stuff for yourself, for your project, let us know, and we will then put that in as well. The only constraint we have is that the APIs for now have got to be something called JSON based. I'm not sure you know what JSON is. It's a method of exchanging information between the client and the server. So we only allow JSON access. There's another older method to exchange data, and that's called XML, right? We don't do that yet, okay, because it's tougher to process XML compared to JSON. Okay, and of course, the BuzzBee template does include self-contained instructions on how you can create your own API clients. We explain how to do one for this thing called close approach objects. So NASA, the US space agency, tracks these objects in space which are anticipated to come close to Earth. So you can use that API, and we show you how to access the API and create your own client APIs to access data from that source. Okay, and from there, I think you can actually adapt that for pretty much anything else.
Maybe we can answer some questions here.
Yep.
So there's two. One is, can we include the Yahoo Finance API?
I don't know. I'm not sure the Yahoo Finance API is JSON based, or is it XML based. So I'm not sure. We can check it out, or you can check it out yourself.
Yeah, or we could perhaps provide an aggregation service as well.
Yeah, no, it's too tough because we don't know which
data probably.
Yeah, which ones to do, right? Yeah.
So
we
another
have that before. Just let you guys know, we did have something like that before, where we were aggregating some functionality for internal use, right? And it did work, but it's limited. For things like financial data and so on, it's best that you do your own grabbing. But yes, most likely, I think you can.
Okay, the other question is, where can we get APIs besides the ones mentioned?
Do a Google search. Google is your friend. Okay, and if you want some suggestions, I think we can show you some. There are tons. There are tons. Okay. The tough question, that not just APIs for these things, there are also IoT APIs as well. In fact, there is a search engine, if I'm not wrong, for IoT data, which is publicly available. Okay, I've forgotten what the site is called. You can just look for IoT search engine, and you get tons of those as well. But I'm not sure if they are going to give you data in JSON format. Okay, remember there are two kinds of formats, XML and JSON. Okay, we do JSON for now. Okay. Anything else, Sam?
There's one that just came in. What is the objective of the bot this time?
The objective of the bot is it's the main goal, okay, of what you have here for this competition. And that is to use these APIs to create something that is of use to people, to the public. Okay. So previously, it was just something that's completely internal. This is something that is going to be more public facing and something that's more practical and useful. Okay. I hope that what you can do is you can actually start working on that now, because that's the goal of the competition, right? So you have actually an extra 2 weeks. So it's this week, next week, and then the following week. This is 4 weeks, right? And so there's a lot of time to actually play around with this. The last week is a testing week, okay? But we want you to develop these applications starting now if you can, okay? So the homework is just to ensure that all of you are on the same, playing field, so to speak, okay? I think that looking at your previous work, submission number 1, I actually did look through all your bots this morning. And they were all actually pretty good in the sense that they're all roughly on the same level. Okay, the design ideas is where I think the people did better. Okay, but I think you want to learn from each other and see what you've done here and know how to improve your bots, right? In terms of starting out, tomorrow we will release the templates for BuzzBee, and I'd like you to work on BuzzBee, work through the exercises, answer all the questions, and come up with a bot that you want to actually submit as a entry into the competition. Or if you want to do something completely different, that's really up to you. Okay, that's just my advice. Any other questions, Sam?
That's about it.
Okay. So I'll just skim through right now this API so you can just have a rough feel of what's happening here. So for bus arrivals, the cloud module is called API Singapore Gov Bus. Okay, and it's real-time bus information. There are 2 words. There's bus arrival, which tells you, when the buses are coming and so on and whatnot, and bus arrival all. So bus arrival is for a given bus and a given bus stop code, and will tell you when will this particular service arrive, bus service arrive. Okay, and the arrival all will give you all of the arrival times of all the services that are going through that stop. Okay. And again, just as a reminder, you can find the documentation by typing the above 2 lines. Okay, it's module/doc, then doc space with the name of the API path. Okay, it's not really a path, it's a cloud word, really. Okay. For the refactored bus stops and bus route APIs, again, the cloud module is just bus/info. And you've got bus stops, plural, nearest, which tells you what the nearest bus stops are, regardless of what the distance is like, just the n nearest, okay? Then you've got bus stops within a certain radius, like 100 meters, 10 meters, and so on, okay? And the details, and you've got bus routes also, so you can actually look at, for this bus service, let's say service number 10, what are all the stops, when will the buses arrive at that particular stop, and when's the first and last buses for various days like weekdays, Sundays, etc. Okay, so all that stuff is available, and the documentation is under bus/info. Okay, maps and address searches. So this is on the mapping module, and you can actually plot maps and actually do address searching as well. So on mapping, you've got a few words. First, you actually create a blank map, and then you can actually add in your points and so on for each map, right? And then actually display the map for yourself for debugging or in your bot. Okay. So the dot plot map is for debugging. Okay, all of this stuff is thoroughly documented. Okay, using the module/doc thing that I showed you just now. For locations, there's address searches where you can search by address name, for example, let's say IMM or a certain block number, etc., and so on. It'll give you the address if there are, or more than one hit if possible. You can search for fragments of a name as well. Okay. There's reverse geolookup reverse geo, what it does is that given a location, it tells you all of the addresses nearby that location, which is on the database. All right, so this is also pretty useful as well. Okay, and again, you can see the documentations for this under /map. And last of all, we've got the places of interest in Singapore. This is the most complicated API because it does a lot. And it's just one API /spaces, but you've got tons of words you've got words with tons of options, right? So there's search by keyword and search by location. Search by keyword is basically all of these locations which are on the database have got some kind of keywords, that like jade or time or something like that, right? And you can actually search for these keywords. You can actually search depending on what category you want them in. Is it a mall, or is it a bar, or is it a venue, or this and that, right? And it has got a lot of types, category specific information. For example, venue if you search on venues, for example, would tell you how many people this venue can hold. All right, is it open all day long, etc. Right? The opening and closing times of the various F&B places, okay, would be up as well. All right, so it's worth to find various places of interest. Okay. Now we've put in just two right now. For now, we're actually going to add in more. Simplified access, because the search by keyword and search by location can be a bit daunting to use. We've got simplified, where you can just do, okay, look, I'm just for parks and so money changes and so on. But how do I do that? Well, we have that as well as a simple to use kind of interface, right? More will be added over time. Okay, and you can search for the documentation as well. It is documented. Okay, so finally we come to the homework. You first want to download the BuzzBee template. My apologies, we've had a bug, so I'm trying to fix it. And once we've fixed it, we will release the template. Okay, I hope it'll be today or tomorrow. Okay, you can just download it in the same areas under templates. Okay, and you need to work through the sessions. There'll be a few sessions, I think 3 sessions, but no videos this time. Okay, you don't really need it. I think what you need for this stuff is really the documentation and detailed notes. So we'll put those things in. All right, so this is a lot more detailed compared to the previous stuff that you had for chatbots, because that was really lighter in a sense. Okay, so I'd like you to make the best BuzzBee app possible. Okay, free your imagination, then run wild. Okay, change the bot entirely if you want to. Make it something completely different if you want to as well. If you like, I think someone talked about Yahoo Finance and so on. If you want to include that kind of information, fine, do that. Okay. If you need some help, we will definitely help you throughout the week on a best effort basis. Okay, for the integration. Okay, this template, like I said before, also contains information on how to write your own JSON client APIs. So that should be fine too. So you should consider this exercise really a draft version of your final chatbot. That's my advice. Okay, it's my advice because it gives you a longer ramp up time. And I think you might need 2 or 3 weeks to do this right. Okay, and to let all the ideas, just sink into your mind, because I realized that this is actually quite it's not a lot of time to reflect on what you've learned. Okay, so I'm giving you the extra room on the permission that you just use this week to come up with a draft version of your final chatbot. Okay, and the submission deadline is not Sunday, but on Monday. All right, Monday at 23:59 Singapore time. Okay. Okay. Any questions? I'm actually pretty much done. Any questions?
Okay. There are 2. How do we add new APIs? And is there any examples to show now?
Yeah. There are examples on how to add new APIs. It will be included in the BuzzBee template. BuzzBee template. There'll be 2 folders in BuzzBee: the BuzzBee bot proper, and another folder on how to make your own APIs. Okay. If you click on how to make your own APIs, there are detailed notes along with some sample code as well. Right. The detailed notes honestly should be sufficient for you to actually write the whole thing from scratch. All right. But if you don't want to do that, you can look and hack the code by all means. Okay. The sample that we give is for NASA. Okay.
Is it a requirement for the chatbot to include geospatial information?
No, it is not. But it would make it interesting, yes. Anything else, sir?
Okay, final call for questions. Anything, please?
I saw someone posting something on Telegram just now.
Oh,
Okay, someone is asking about how to use the Smojo doc. All right, so let me just demo it for you, perhaps might be helpful. Okay, so, oh, you can't see my screen, right? I keep forgetting. Just give me a second. Okay, so someone asked me how
I can't see your screen. It's just a white line.
Oh, just give me a second. Not sure why. Is that better?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay, so the idea is very simple. You first open up a blank page, says mojo/doc. Okay. And then what you do is you just put in your doc that you want to look for, which is, let's say, in this case, mojo/API/SG/gov. This part is always the same because it's all Singapore data sources. And bus, let's say bus, okay? And just run this with the green button. I like to press Control-R to run it, okay? And you should see something like this. So the blue section is really just an overview of the various things that you can see going on here. And the other details, so you can see here the word itself, the cloud word itself, it's like a module. These are notes for the module itself. And you can see there are two words here updated, well, today. Okay, because we've been working on this today and cleaning up everything for you today. Okay, so there are two words, bus arrival and bus arrival all. Okay, so I will again send you the notes with the overview of the words that we have currently, but you should use this. This is quite useful. There's also example code here on how to use these. I think that this is not so good. I need to change this part here, but the code will work. Okay, so let's just take this for example. And this is really just copy this. Open up a new page here, paste it in and run. Okay. And so what this tells you is, okay, look, for this, so I first open up the cloud word, okay, and then I've keyed in the the bus stop code, the 5-digit bus stop code, and I've given this number 15, which is the bus number. I know it actually arrives in this bus stop, okay, and then there are many different arrival times because it will show you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Or few. Actually, I think it shows you 3. The next 3 buses that are going to arrive from this service at this bus stop. Okay. And then all I'm doing here is just to format. So estimated arrival will give you the time, a date, a Unix date. Okay, so it's in the documentation itself. Look at it here. Look at the arrival time here. It says estimated time arrival, exit nearest minute. This is in a Unix Java format, which you honestly don't have to worry about because there are functions to help you display all that stuff. Okay, and I've given you the sample code here as well. Okay, if you want to get the stuff in, let's say, minutes, there's another accessor, which is estimated arrival minutes, this one here. Okay, and all you do is just say dash minutes. So how much time from the present, right? I'll just print this out and comment this out. Okay, so that's 15 minutes. The float bus number 15 will arrive at this particular stop within the next 15 minutes, and this is an estimate. Okay, or if you prefer to look at it from a time point of view, then I'll change that back, and it says, 8:44. This is in military or 24-hour clock. If you want to change that, you can do HH. Okay, and it's just 8:44. If you want to include the year and other stuff, you can as well. Okay, 29th of November, right, 8:44. All this stuff is documented, and you can see this in format time, which is in your time. It's in your little hat thing. And I also put out, I think we've got a link here as well for the times, right? Yeah, format time is a link here for you to go and check it out. Okay. So it might look complex at the start, but actually it's not, to be honest. This one is fairly straightforward, and once you start to use it and play around with the sample code, there's tons of sample code out here, and you can just copy and paste it, all the blue stuff, and it should just run. So let's try this one that's more complicated. So this shows you all of the arriving buses from right now at this particular bus stop. I have no idea where this is, but we can actually find out, to be honest. And let's just print this out and run it. Oops. See, this is one of the things when you write code too fast. Arrival times should be okay. So how would you debug something like this? This is interesting, right?
I think there's in the line 14, there's an extra space.
Is there an extra space?
In a semicolon.
Ah, yeah, of course. Thanks, Sam. So, yeah, there you go. Okay, so I'll fix that later on. Okay, but the idea is simple. You can just cut and paste the code. It should just work. If you find any errors, please let us know. It's probably just my thick fingers just putting extra spaces where it shouldn't belong. Okay, when I cut and pasted it. Okay. All right. So you can try that out for yourself. Any questions?
Okay, if we need details that are more than what the API can give us, are there ways to obtain this information?
What do you mean by that? That sounds very mysterious.
And I guess it's the next one is only the 3 APIs will be using Mojo API SG Gulf. What about the other APIs that we want to add?
Yes, like I said, you can add your own APIs and build them from scratch. Then in that case, it's not a cloud word anymore. Okay, it's not a cloud word anymore. You can just use your own words, just like how you create normal topics and put in your Mojo words for stuff like that. There are guided examples for you to copy and paste if you want to be honest. Okay.
So I guess the answer is that if you have you find an API that you want to include, you can actually write the code yourself to get the API.
Yes, you can, as long as it uses JSON, JSON, okay, which most modern APIs do. Unfortunately, the NLB API does not use JSON. It uses XML, okay, which is much harder to pass. If we have the time, we will add that in as well. Okay, it's just that we don't have the time, and most modern API systems don't use XML anymore. This must be quite old already if it's XML based. Okay. APIs like these started off with XML. In fact, that's one of the promises of XML. This, I think, was about 20 years ago. Okay, I think 20 years ago, XML was a big deal. But then people started realizing that XML took too long to process, too hard to program, it was a mess. So one intrepid soul, what's the one guy? He started something called JSON. I think it's called, what does it stand for, Sam? JavaScript Object Notation System, something like that. I can't remember. JavaScript Object Notation, that's right, JSON, all right? Just one guy. Right, XML was actually a simplification of an even more complicated system called SGML, which is used by libraries and so on to actually document stuff for the next 1,000 years. I mean that, right? Digital system, standardized digital system. But XML was then widely used, unfortunately, because of its complexity and slowness in processing XML code. It fell out of favor for data exchange. It's still used for things like configuration files and so on. If you are familiar with programming, you've probably seen Ant and Maven and so on, and those things all use XML, right? Still quite extensively.
Okay, I think Josh has clarified his questions.
Yep, Josh.
For example, if we use the place of interest API, not sure if they include whether the shops are open at those places. And to go deeper, whether we want to provide info of what the shops are selling or not during certain days.
Oh, I see. Okay, so look, it's all about availability of information, right? So all these APIs run by governments and so on, it's just to help people like you and us. Well, not so much us, but you, because you are the bot developers. You are actually the developers of these chatbots and interactive systems. They do us a favor by aggregating and collecting all that data, right? So oftentimes in building these systems, the hard part is to locate the information. Okay, so if it's really not on the API, well, then it's tough. I actually ran into that today, where I thought that all of the STB data sets records would contain images of the locations in which they dish out, but unfortunately not all do, right? So some have images and some don't. Okay, so you can hit display the images using, I think, get image URL and so on, and I give an example as well. Okay, so
yeah, I think, and even if it's some of the even the STB data is also not complete. So
yeah,
certain shops may have their opening hours published, but certain shops are not. So yeah, that's part of the challenge in
yeah, it is a challenge.
kind of chatbots.
Yeah, and I think that's where you have to find other ways of doing it. I've got no idea how to do it. Not for this one, right? For example, like how do providers like Google and so on do that as well? It's so you can think about the considerable effort they go to actually to collect the kind of data and actually make it happen, right? Yeah. Okay.
Any more questions? Final call. Yeah, if not, I guess that's it.
If you think about it, how do these large companies know when a certain store in Singapore opens? Because you look at when you click up like things like their pages and so on, they have got opening times, when it's full, when it's busy, and so on, right? How do they know? How do they know, right? It's possible that the stores themselves have registered with these companies, which make them into a data collector. But I suspect it is also because they might be aggregating data that comes out of our phones, right? Because they do store information. There are no laws against that for the US, I believe. And they can actually collect information, cross-link it with other stuff that we are doing as we are tapping and using our phones, okay? And then make that data available to the public, right? So it's actually metadata that's been repurposed and reused to actually create something that's useful, but it's not trivial. Okay. Any last questions?
Okay, we'll send you the slides after the presentation. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah, and I'm so sorry that the template is not up yet. It's nearly done. It's just that one really, weird bug which just cropped up just this morning, and we'll solve it and we'll let you know when to download the template. Okay. Someone asked if I would comment on all the bots. No, I don't have the time for that, to be honest. But I think that for most, I did look at all the bots. Okay, so my general impression is that for those of you who submitted later on in the night, I think at least for the last five or 10 bots, they were largely incomplete. Okay, and the last bot suddenly was completely incomplete in the sense that it was just a template with most of the stuff just missing. Okay, it's okay to do that, but I hope that you won't stop there. Please go and improve, okay, your bots, okay, and make sure it's working and that you're comfortable with the technology as well in terms of thinking about how to build these chatbots and so on and whatnot. Okay, one of the comments that I got earlier on, in fact, is, okay, how do chatbots, how they're different from, let's say, things like websites and so on. And I sort of hope I explained that. Okay, websites tend to pack information around content. So you've got, let's say, you have a store, you've got stuff to sell, and it's just a click, the click goes to a certain place, and that's it, right? But chatbots are different in the sense that they shouldn't be content focused, they should be people focused or user focused, right? So this is not a hard kind of programming kind of thing, it's a design skill, right? And it's an important design skill because of how information is used by people in modern times. When I was growing up, information was scarce. Okay, so all of us would go to libraries, look at books and so on, just to get information. Okay, but I think most of you, let's say under, I don't know, 35 or whatever it is, right? Information is not scarce anymore. Right? You grew up in worlds where Google was already a thing. You could search for stuff at your fingertips. So information is not scarce. Instead, it's information overload that is the problem. Too much information. I don't know where to find interesting things or things that are useful for me. And that's why these companies and so on, like YouTube and so on, go to great lengths to try and profile people, to try and get something that is to present you with something that's interesting. Okay, so it might find out what your friends like or have viewed before in the past. Okay, and what you have viewed in the past to actually suggest something. Okay, this is an automatic means to do that, right? But when it comes to chatbot design, you don't have that luxury. You want to make it a lot more, how do I say it, less hit and miss in that sense. And the way you do that is to focus on design right at the start. You think about what are your users coming there for? What would they be interested in? And you look at the simple human aspects of things like the use of visuals, the use of contrast. Don't dump too much text and really try and trim it down and try and focus on engaging the user through bite-sized bits of information. And usually that information is something that he or she might be interested in, okay? And it could be topical. So the same content can be repurposed using a topical kind of filter, so to speak, like I showed you just now, where you could talk about photography, or let's say if you're interested in, I don't know, fishing in the Nile, okay? So that's topical, okay? It's still a Nile tour, but with a fishing aspect to it, right? So having stuff like that, which is more topical and user-centric, is really where you must get your bots to. Otherwise, they will always be stuck in square one. It's okay to start at square one, which is content-focused, okay? So all of your bots, almost without exception, were all content-focused, which is okay, all right? But I think there were some breakaways and some bots going the right step. I did highlight those, okay? The ones which I didn't highlight or didn't call out, you were either just on the same level as everyone else, or slightly below because you came in. I know that those bots who came in later, I think you guys had some trouble with the bots or couldn't get things done on time. Okay. So I hope that covers it on an overall basis. Okay. This week, we really want to start to go further into the programming part for APIs, okay, which is, I think, a little more challenging than it was last week. So I will try and get the templates up ASAP, and hopefully we'll get this going by today or by tomorrow. And any other questions, let us know. Sam, myself, would be glad to answer. Anything else, Sam?
Nope. That's all.
Nope. Okay. So we'll call it a day. And please continue to ask questions over the group. Okay. And good night.
Bye.